Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are setting the stage for a seriously wild journey. We're going to travel across oceans and completely back in time to uncover the dramatic and honestly almost unbelievable story of a completely ordinary household item. We're going to explore how a tiny, unassuming little berry from a vine literally started wars, built massive empires, and fundamentally redrew the map of our entire world.
So, picture your kitchen table right now. Just zoom right in on it. What do you see? Probably, right there next to the salt, is a small glass jar filled with these tiny black circles. We use it every single day, right? We shake it over our morning eggs or a bowl of pasta without a second thought. To us, it's just normal.
But I want to mess with your perspective a little bit here. Imagine, just for a second, that this small shaker isn't full of some cheap common spice. Imagine it's packed with solid gold or diamonds. Because believe it or not, there was a time when pepper was the most valuable thing on the planet. They literally called it black gold. It was the undisputed king of spices, something so ridiculously prized that kings hoarded it and explorers actually died trying to find it.
So how did this all start? Let's dive right into Section 1, the origins of black gold.
Let's look at the botanical birth of this stuff. Close your eyes and imagine the heavy, humid air and the smell of wet earth in the deep jungles of southwest India. Growing right there is this vine called Piper nigrum, and it has these beautiful heart-shaped leaves. Hidden among those leaves are tiny green berries. When someone carefully picks those berries and leaves them out to bake in the hot sun, they shrivel up and transform into the hard, black, wrinkled peppercorns we know today. I mean, just imagine being the very first human to pop one of those in your mouth and feeling that slow, warm fire on your tongue.
The people of ancient India totally revered this magic little berry as a huge gift from nature. And they didn't just use it to bring some heat to their dinner. They actually relied on it as a really potent medicine. They believed it could cure stomach pains and keep the human body strong. But of course, something this amazing wasn't going to stay hidden in the jungle for long. Soon enough, it started traveling on the backs of camels across scorching deserts and in small wooden boats braving the open sea. Which brings us to Section 2, Pepper in the Ancient World. To give you an idea of just how intensely sacred and valuable pepper was back then, check out this anecdote. Over in ancient Egypt, when the legendary pharaoh Ramses II died, they didn't just surround him with gold. During his mummification, they literally shoved peppercorns right up inside his nose. The logic was, hey, he's the greatest pharaoh, so he absolutely needs the best, most expensive spices to take with him into the afterlife. And over in Rome, it was the ultimate flex. Rich Romans would toss pepper into their wine and sprinkle it on fruit just to show everyone how insanely wealthy they were. Get this, in the year 408 AD, when a group of invaders called the Goths completely surrounded Rome, the Romans had to pay this massive ransom to make them go away. They paid in gold, they paid in silver, and they had to hand over exactly 3,000 pounds of black pepper. To an invading army, this stuff was literally as good as precious metals.
But if you're holding all the cards, you've got to protect the source, right? For hundreds of years, Arab traders completely controlled the Silk Road routes. And to keep the actual location of the pepper a total secret from their desperate buyers, they just made up these absolutely terrifying lies. They told everyone that the pepper vines were fiercely guarded by swarms of poisonous snakes. They said the only way to harvest it was to literally set the forest on fire to drive the snakes away. I mean, it was brilliant, terrifying marketing, and it worked flawlessly for centuries.
Now fast forward to the Middle Ages in Europe, and the obsession with pepper is just out of control. You've probably heard that old myth, right? That people dumped spices on their food just to hide the taste of rotting meat because they didn't have fridges? Actually, scratch that. It's completely false. Think about it. If you could afford astronomically expensive pepper, you could absolutely afford a fresh cut of meat. Having pepper on your table was a massive status symbol. It was essentially the iPhone of the Middle Ages. In some towns, the price was so absurdly high that people literally paid their rent with peppercorns. No joke.
And that desperation leads us straight into Section 3, the Age of Discovery.
Eventually, Europeans got totally sick of those middleman markups from Arab and Italian traders. They were desperate, so they decided to do the impossible. They realized the only way to get the pepper was to bypass the middlemen and sail all the way around the world, into oceans they genuinely thought were full of sea monsters. In 1497, a guy named Vasco da Gama led 4 Portuguese ships out of Lisbon. They sailed south into the terrifying unknown, battling brutal storms and horrific sickness as they rounded the Cape of Good Hope. Finally, in May 1498, they spotted land. They had reached Calicut, India. They actually pulled it off.
But when Vasco da Gama got off the boat, the local leaders asked him a pretty simple question. What exactly are you looking for? His answer was chillingly brief. 2 words, Christians and spices.
He wasn't there to shake hands and set up a friendly trade agreement. He wanted absolute control. He sailed back to Portugal with ships stuffed with pepper, making a ridiculous profit, and next time he brought cannons to make absolutely sure Portugal owned the ocean.
So just let that sink in. Because of a tiny, wrinkly black berry, the entire balance of global power completely flipped. All that wealth drained out of the Mediterranean and flooded directly into the Atlantic. Countries like Portugal, and soon Spain and England, stepped up to become the new masters of the world. The map was quite literally redrawn by spice.
Which sets the perfect violent stage for Section 4 Global Spice Wars.
Once that sea route was exposed, oh man, everybody wanted a piece of the action. This sparked an intense, decades-long clash between two absolute titans. The Dutch created the VOC, which was probably the richest company in human history, and the English formed the East India Company. And let's be super clear here, they did not act like friendly merchants. They acted like ruthless, heavily armed governments. The Dutch literally had their own army, they minted their own coins, and they enforced their pepper monopoly under the threat of death. They built these massive, heavily armed forts, basically turning beautiful coastal spice forests into violent war zones, all just to control the flow of money.
But here is a wild twist. These incredibly violent, risky trade wars, they actually birthed our modern economy. Sending a massive ship all the way to India was crazy expensive and super risky. No single person could afford to do it alone, so they invented this concept called joint stock. Basically, a bunch of people pool their money, buy shares of a voyage, and then split whatever profits come back. Sound familiar? That is because this exact system is the direct ancestor of the stock market we have today. Mega companies like Google or Amazon literally owe their fundamental corporate structure to the 17th century spice trade. Crazy, right?
Pepper was just this relentless engine driving the entire global economy. Even in the 1700s, an American sailor from Massachusetts made a voyage to Sumatra just for pepper, and he came back with profits so unbelievably huge that it helped turn Salem into one of the richest cities in America. And it wasn't just about money either. It actually pushed medical science forward. Scientists studying this powerful spice eventually discovered piperine. That's the specific chemical that gives pepper its spicy kick, which opened up a whole new understanding of how spices affect our bodies and our brains.
So, let's bring it all back home in Section 5, the modern pepper shaker.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, how did the king of spices, a luxury item you could literally use to pay your rent, fall so hard that it became a cheap staple sitting on every diner table in the world? Well, everything changed in the 1800s and 1900s. We finally figured out how to grow it in way more places, opening up these massive new plantations across Brazil, Africa, and Asia. Throw in modern machinery that could pick and dry the berries at lightning speed, and suddenly the supply just skyrocketed. Because we could make so much of it so easily, the price absolutely plummeted. For the first time in history, it became something that literally everyone could afford.
And honestly, you might be totally surprised to find out who holds the crown today. Ancient India might have been the birthplace, but right now, Vietnam takes the absolute biggest slice of the pie. They are officially the largest producer of black pepper in the entire world today.
So, yeah, pepper might have stepped down from its royal throne to just live among us regular folks, but its legacy is still incredibly strong. It teamed up with salt to become the ultimate dynamic duo of every kitchen on Earth. But don't get it twisted, it is still deeply respected. High-end chefs around the world treat specific varieties like Telesherry and Lampoon with the exact same reverence as a really fine wine. And even today, health experts are telling us to consume pepper along with turmeric because that piperine chemical actually helps our bodies absorb the medicine better. It's still working its ancient magic.
We have crossed deadly deserts, sailed terrifying oceans, and watched huge empires rise and fall, all because of a tiny black peppercorn. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you are cooking dinner, just stop for a second. Take a pinch of that pepper between your fingers. Are you just going to see a cheap little table spice? Or are you going to feel the weight of millions of people, the violent clash of global trade wars, and a literally world-shaping history resting right there in your hand? Because history isn't just trapped in textbooks, my friends. It's sitting right there in our kitchens. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and hey, enjoy your next meal.